Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. My goodness. Welcome to the 2026 Missouri Legislative Session preview. My name is Tori Peterson. I'm the president and co-founder of Aligned. We're so thrilled to have you all here today as we talk about not every bill that made it through or to the Missouri State Legislature this year, but those bills that were on the priority list for Aligned will certainly be covered today, in addition to some of the education-specific budget line items as well. So this meeting is being recorded today. However, when we get to the end, we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A, which will not be shared or recorded at the end. So if you wouldn't mind, please save your questions, pop them in the chat, whatever is easiest for you to remember them, and we'll circle back for each of the issues at the end during the Q&A. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get us going today. As I alluded to before, we're going to cover our Missouri priorities for the line, specifically key education policy bills, budget takeaways, a little bit on what we're watching for next year, and then, of course, a wrap up with a Q&A. As we look at this session, it's a little bit disheartening that we didn't get any of our priority bills over the finish line. We've had years like that in the past, but we've also had years where we passed 4 or 5. So it's just the nature of the beast when it comes to a legislature working on multiple issues. I will tell you, although we didn't get any of our central priorities over the finish line this legislative session, they're all coming back. They're all issues we care about deeply and issues that will come back in the next legislative session as well. To recap some of our Missouri priorities this last year, first and foremost, school finance reform. We have been central to the conversations around the formula review, working with and through the task force to try and drive good conversation and research around what will be a revamped funding formula for Missouri in the next couple of years. So still very central to those conversations. Although we didn't see legislation around school finance reform, that is certainly something that is coming in the next 2 sessions, and we anticipate fully participating in as well. Open enrollment, I believe this is year 6. We've worked on open enrollment legislation, expanding school choice across districts. One of the caveats that we've always pushed for with open enrollment is a good open enrollment bill must include transportation, or not all kids truly have open enrollment. Unfortunately, that one didn't get much discussion this session, but certainly will be something that will be revisited in future conversations. Finally, early care and education and the enhanced child care tax credit bill was once again close and to the finish line, and not something we were able to make it over the finish line, but something that we will revisit in the future. Literacy, another bill, the science of reading bill. I see Representative Kathy Jo Loy here today, helped carry that for us. And for me, that was my favorite bill of the session, and something that I still feel passionately about trying to get over the finish line as we have conversations about getting more of our Missouri students to and through grade level reading as well. And then finally, the A through F or accountability bills this year, as you recall, were set in stone via an executive order, but also tried very vehemently to get that in statute for years to come, but was not able to make it over the finish line. Let's dig into these. Okay, so first and foremost, as I just alluded to, the A through F accountability bill. This A through F bill or A through F legislation is actually still something that will move forward via executive order. So as long as Governor Kehoe is in office, A through F will be something that's carried forward. What we tried to do this year with some of our partners, us more in a support role, was get that put into statute so it's something that lasts beyond his tenure. Essentially, the A through F imposed a rating system for each building across Missouri to drive parent transparency and a little more insight into educational outcomes for our students. Again, multiple versions filed, they're listed on the screen, and none of those made it over the finish line despite a lot of effort. Open enrollment, the same similar two bills were filed this year as have been filed in the last four, creates and modifies and repeals provisions related to student transfers, essentially opens up and lets students move between school districts as they choose, with some parameters around the percentage of students moving, et cetera. Again, it goes back to offering parents choice and options for their students when their assigned zip code school district isn't working for them. This is something that it did not make it over the finish line. However, I anticipate this coming back in years to come as well, as most of the surrounding states around Missouri have open enrollment in some way, shape, or form. The child care tax credit bill, House Bill 2409, Representative Brenda Shields has carried this for 3 or 4 years now, offering tax credits for employer-provided child care assistance and for child care providers to help them keep their doors open. Why it matters to us as a business leader-led organization, we know and we hear from employers that they're losing about $1.25 billion annually, that's billion with a B, due to child care gaps. Folks aren't able to find the childcare that they need to be able to go to work. And we're hearing it loud and clear from our business leaders. So making sure that we can keep quality childcare seats open for parents to be able to choose what's best for their students is something that we care about deeply and have since our inception 14 years ago. And it's something that we will continue to press on as we look at options to make sure parents have choice to go to work and their kids are safe and have quality options for their early learning years. Literacy bill, this bill, both Senate Bill 1442 and House Bill 2872, again, as I alluded to before, creates, repeals, and modifies provisions relating to the literacy of elementary school students. I think you've probably heard before, but our literacy rates for third grade students is very, very low across the state. And this essentially was designed to give school districts, administrators teeth around putting provisions into place to make sure that no student can get beyond that third and fourth grade year without some serious intervention and or retention. And quite frankly, it was designed to help teachers and support them in that endeavor to get students where they need to be. It included the use of high quality instructional materials. It banned 3Qing in the teaching setting. So for the schools of education, it required a third grade retention piece and included a single screener so that all schools could be compared across the state as well. Again, in my mind, this is good policy. It was designed to help and support schools, administrators, and teachers, and something that I think we just need to continue having conversations around to ensure that we can get this over the finish line down the road and give our school leaders teeth when it comes to putting literacy back where it belongs, without below grade level scores. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Eric Severson, to walk us through some of the state budget overviews around education.
Great. Thanks, Tori. Hi, everyone. Like Tori said, I'm Eric Severson. I'm the Vice President of Policy Research for Aligned. Just wanted to give you a little bit of a rundown of what was passed on the legislature in Missouri as regards to the budget. As you can see, the legislature's agreed to a $50 billion total budget. However, some of the things that I wanted to point out relating to especially the spending items and K-12 is specifically are the fund transfers required to provide education funding, as well as some somewhat optimistic revenue projections, especially around the state lottery funds. However, as you can see there, one thing that we did want to highlight, especially as it's related to one of our goals in early childhood education, is the restoration of childcare subsidies, meaning that total childcare subsidies funding remained relatively flat compared to the last fiscal year, which is something we see as vital for the sector, as Tori's mentioned before. Tori, could you go to the next slide, please? Great. Now, so specifically looking at K-12, the General Assembly agreed to essentially keep funding a little bit flat. It's actually slightly less than last year, about $190 million less in K-12 funding flowing through the formula. Again, a lot of that funding is reliant on things like transferring from certain revenue sources, such as a pot of money that the General Assembly put aside for renovating the state capitol in Jeff City, as well as making some projections of specific revenue streams. I mentioned the lottery fund, for instance, increasing over time. We've seen just decreasing amounts of revenue relative to projections in those categories. So the total amount of funding flowing through the formula is a little bit down compared to last fiscal year. But as we can see there, mostly for transportation and the small schools program funding is relatively stable. The Mo Scholars program received a $10 million increase to $60 million. So we wanted to point that out as well. Tori, if you go to the next slide, please. Higher education was actually a major focus this year for the general budget discussions. Initially, there was a proposal coming from the House to provide operational funding for all higher education institutions in the state based on the student enrollment of institutions. That made its way through the House, but was quickly removed and altered by the Senate. There was seen by many senators as well as some House members that it would create too many winners and losers, specifically losers like Truman State, who would see a net reduction in their funding by about 50% based on their current year funding. So as a compromise, the senators agreed to have the Department of Higher Education Workforce Development in Missouri recommend a new funding formula for higher education that will be due by December 1st of this year. So we will see, as legislators will get the report from the department, what kind of formula that will be. I will point out December 1st is also a key date because that is also when a new formula or a report of a new formula is due for K-12 education in Missouri. So December 1st is a big day for Missouri on both the K-12 and higher education funding side. Overall, the total amount of appropriations and the operational support for the institutions remain relatively flat compared to last year. And yeah, the new formula is, I think, definitely going to be top of mind come next legislative session as we have these negotiations again. I'll turn it back over to you, Tori. I think what we're watching next. Yeah.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, so yeah, looking ahead, again, this wasn't intended to just simply review what did and didn't make it over the finish line this year, or rather what didn't. That said, I can see next session, there's a lot of conversation, a lot of groups involved in revisiting accountability and transparency legislation. There will be continued discussion around open enrollment and student mobility and making sure that parents who need flexibility for their students have access. Implementation and funding around childcare access will always and continue to be a question that we push in the State House. And then finally, continued push and momentum around literacy policy to make sure that, more than 50% of our students are reading on grade level. That will continue to be a conversation in the State House. And then finally, higher ed and K-12 funding formula recommendations will be available for review, as Eric alluded to, in December. And I look for maybe not passage, but at least good conversation around those funding formulas in the 2027 session. With that being said, I realize we got through that pretty fast. And I do want to take some time here. We'll stop recording and open it up for questions that you all might have. Please feel free to come off mute.